Come back. Um, some issues with setting everything up. Just make sure to let me know that you can hear me. Just before I get started, we're in for a good one today. Now, just to get straight in, I know yesterday and some other people were asking. We know that the UN, we know World Economic Forum. These are things that we hear of all the time. You know, asking what the plan is, what are they doing. There's a certain document that's been kind of floating around, and this document they're saying is fake. And basically, the head of the document says the New World Order, UN Agenda 21-2030 mission goals. Now, a lot of fact checkers online are saying that this is fake, but when I looked over it, it was almost laughable to see the things that were on this list are actually happening. And the distraction I feel that they use in the UN and the World Economic Forum is this whole thing, and many of us have seen a lot on it in terms of the goals that they have, what they call their 7-year goals. They make it look like it's all good in terms of the things that they have planned. But when you see this list, and I'm going to go through it, and I said it'd take me time on this, so you can actually see for yourself, and you determine on whether you feel kind of their plan is actually starting to come to fruition, and the things that they've been looking to try to do. I know Ireland over the last kind of few years, it's almost like a testing ground now. The amount of things that's happening here, the amount of things that the government are allowing is absolutely mind-boggling. Now, as I look at all of these things happen, most of us that's into eschatology or end time science know that all of this is triggering up to something. And I'm looking at Ireland, like back home, and I'm seeing the escalation of end time science, and it looks like Jesus could come any day. But I'm also trying to get the word out that obviously the enemy is doing everything he can in its power to suppress people and to really hold them down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call out, just so you can hear some of the goals that what they said is their fake file, but on this UN agenda for 2030 are their mission goals. And then I'm going to give you some of the ones where they're actually starting to implement and looking to try implement. And some of you will probably know some of this, some of the things that's going to be called out. So the first one up the top obviously is a one world government, and most of us know at some stage this is going to happen, that they're going to try their best to get a one world government, a one world cashless society or a cashless currency. And we know that this is actually starting to happen. They're looking to do the digital currency, which eventually within the next 5 years is probably going to happen. Then it talks about the likes of a one world central bank or military. Now, I can't see that happening just yet. Can it happen down the line? Of course. Then it talks about the end of the family unit. Now, that's something that we know is starting to happen today. Even been in church today, in the past, the preaching was right on key, and he was talking about the younger generation who have no identity. And even some of the education they're bringing in is going to cause absolute confusion to what even a family home or a family unit that God designed will be gone. And that's the plan and that's the aim, because then if we do that, or if that plan works, everything goes at that stage. And then it talks about depopulation or control of population growth and population density. Most of us that have been keeping an eye on what's going on over the last 3 or 4 years, that's something that they are definitely doing. But one thing that they're looking to try to do is the end of all privately owned vehicles. It's something that they're definitely looking to try do. And you'll find that if you go into the World Economic Forum, you'll find that one of the mission goals that they have is to cut down on privately bought vehicles, to get people out of cars, to stop sale of some of the cars as well, to get people what they call into public transport. But this is just another tool that they can use to control people who don't want what we call a middle class. They want everyone to be dependent totally on their system. Obviously then it talks about mandatory multiple, the cure that they gave people over the last couple of years. They want to have loads of them, but that's been kind of in place now for the last 30 or 40 years, and it's only going to get worse. Now, here's one that's on the list, And I actually heard about it on the local news here, and it's called Universal Basic Income. Now, with the universal basic income, if you type it in, go to Google, type in universal basic income, and the UK comes up. It's actually something they're looking to try in the UK. And here's what comes up when it asks that question: England's first trial of universal basic income, or UBI, a welfare model where every citizen receives a regular flat payment, has been held in. Now, in its final planning stages, the micropilot will pay an unconditional £1,600 a month for 2 years to 15 randomly selected people. They're actually trialling this in the UK. They're looking to trial it from January next year. When they go further in, they're actually looking to do it with over 200 people in different parts of the UK. But the universal basic income is another form to rely on the government totally. So one that was on the list, this one that's on the list is actually happening. It's that they're looking to try implement it. And this is why when I read over the list the first time, I knew, because I've been listening to some of this stuff even locally, the things they are looking to try do. Another one most of us have seen: Microchip Society, for purchasing or buying or selling, for travelling, tracking and controlling. Now, many people, I mean, you're getting into the realms of what we call market of the beast at that stage. Well, you know, they're looking at digital passports at the moment. That's probably going to be the next phase. Eventually, then, could that lead into a chip that you put in, or some sort of physical implant? Yes, the potentials are there. So the list, I mean, we're only halfway down through the list, and there's two of them there that definitely are already in play, between the privately owned vehicles and the universal basic income. It's really actually, it's not funny, but I was laughing when I first read it. Implementation of a world social credit system. And we're seeing, obviously, in China that happens already. Australia, they're looking to launch it there as well. Europe is probably going to be next for it to happen, and then it'll catch on into the US and other countries. And eventually, between the digital passport that they're looking to try to do and digital currency, once they kind of initiate a whole system for their credit score, it'll be very easy for them to monitor and track people. So if people aren't being good, obviously your credit score goes down, which doesn't allow you to travel, etc., etc. So they really are pushing the agenda when it comes to all of these, what they call their mission goals, or potentially their mission goals to launch. Trillions of appliances hooked into 5G monitoring systems, or Internet of Things. Now, that's my line of work, and that's what happens now at the moment. I mean, a regular plane will have hundreds of IoT SIMs that transfers data back and forth. Your household items have them as well. That's just going to become more and more. And yes, I mean, when you take away the conspiracy side, the 5G units that you see all over the place are actually 5G units. Won't go down that rabbit hole, but the Internet of Things is something big, and I believe it's going to be used in the infrastructure of the big system, which will come in the tribulation period. One of the ones that came to mind, and really kind of looking at what's happening in the world with the kids, and you know how the government are really pressing on them. One came up called government raised children, which, and it kind of coincides with government owned and controlled schools, colleges and universities. And nowadays that we see the biggest ideological idea at the moment that's been pushed is this whole gender nonsense at the moment. Absolute craziness with some of the things that they're doing, and the government are backing it, even in Ireland, by adding it into certain what they call their hate speech laws. But they're not very clear, and there's been a lot of backlash here on those laws. We're going to find out obviously come winter time, but at the moment they're really trying to own the kids, the next generation, who will fully depend on what we call the elites, or the people in power. When you look at how they're actually looking to break family units, you'll own nothing and be happy, as Klaus Schwab says in the World Economic Forum. All of it's leading to break down a society to get them to be fully and solely dependent on the government and on the powers. When I say government, we know, technically speaking, the banks own most of them because of money, but they really are pushing to do it. Now, here's one that's definitely happening, and I actually only heard it on the radio in here in Ireland last week, and it's the end of private transportation, owning cars, and obviously looking to try charge you for flying. And in Ireland, as I say, I heard it on the radio. What they're looking to try to do for people that fly is the tax. It's called a carbon tax, or an air travel carbon tax, which only allows you to fly a certain amount of miles. And if you go over that, you're going to be paying big taxes, and you go into the higher. Now, what they're doing with all of these, and this is why I'm strong on this today, all of these things will benefit the elite, the people in power, because when we look at what's happened since 2019 and 20, when all of us had to stay at home, we couldn't go out and socialise, they kept us behind closed doors and bubbles and all of the things that they threw at us. Yet the people in power could still go and have parties and meet up and socialise and travel and get on their private jets. This will happen the exact same way. It's going to be no different when this thing actually truly kicks off. And I'm seeing bit by bit all of these mission goals being implemented, and it doesn't look like it's going to take too long to get there before the agenda really and truly kicks in. It also says the restriction of non-essential air travel, which I talked about there, the carbon tax that they're looking for people that are going to be travelling. And obviously on the Irish news, we're a small economy, a small country, but yet they're looking to try to implement it here if possible. Obviously the airlines have to be involved as well, but they're looking to tax you on everything, and for you to drive anywhere, do it all. One of the big ones that's happening at the moment is human beings concentrating into human settlement zones or cities. Now, this is a big one that's happening at the moment. If you Google 15-minute city in the UK, there's 6 different counties within the UK that are looking to implement 15-minute cities to test it out. Now, essentially what a 15-minute city is that they want you, where you do not have to leave that zone, that all your essentials are there, whether it be healthcare and food and your job, is all there within a 15-minute journey. Now, I think they say that's by walk or cycling, but how they've planned to do it in the UK, if you zone it out down where they're looking to do it, you'd actually need permission to go from one zone to another. So even in the States, if they were to implement this, if it make this short, you would need permission to travel from, for argument's sake, South Carolina to North Carolina. You'd need permission to cross from one. It's actually shorter than that, so it would go by province within the state. But this 15-minute city is the way things are going. Have a look at what they're doing in, I think it's Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia, where they're looking to build a wall with a city within it. So this is not science fiction, guys. This is definitely something they are planning to do. And, you just have to look at Hollywood when they throw out certain movies. The one that comes to mind is Hunger Games, and that is exactly how they want to do it, where you have the lower class from kind of like zone 2 all the way back to 12 to supply everything to the heart of the capital, which is the elite. And the elite is a small percentage of people that have a huge percentage of the wealth, and the rest of us just fight because the middle class is shrinking. They're called the squeezed middle here, and it's just getting smaller and smaller. It also says the end of immigration. How I see that happen is because the mass immigration is already happening around the place. Now, I never really had an issue with immigration, but uncontrolled immigration or open borders is not really good. But we're seeing at the moment there's a flood of it into Europe, that it's really just escalated over the last 2 years, and the war in Ukraine and Russia did not help it. Here's something that's definitely happening that most of you can probably relate to or know and heard of, is the end of private farms and grazing livestock. Now, we know what's happened over in the Netherlands, the World Economic Forum and the UN coming together to give money to farmers to close farms down, and there was thousands of them, and it's going to happen more and more into Europe. They're looking to try close them down. In terms of the grazing in Ireland, what they wanted to do was to cut farmers' livestock by 7 or 8%, in order to cut the grazing, because they're saying that the cows are causing the climate crisis. All of these signal virtues, all of them, whether it be climate change, all the ideologies, are all distractions in order for them to get kind of their plan through and their agenda through. They really are pushing it more and more. Something they're doing as well is the restriction of land use that serves human needs, which is definitely happening now. They're restricting people movement. They're restricting what you eat. They're saying they want to get rid of cows and start Bill Gates and all the farms that he's bought over there to create what they call like a subset meat, a fake meat. It's not real meat. Come on, guys, open your eyes to realise that this is actually happening. The ban, and then obviously the last one then is the end of fossil fuels, which most of us know that they're looking to try do. Now, when I look at why they're looking to kind of end fossil fuels, essentially by turning everything green, it's making it harder for the BRICS nations or the poor countries to develop because they'll be so far behind. And this is one of the main reasons why you're seeing the whole climate change, or the BRICS nations being Africa, the whole lot, all of them places, they cannot catch up in terms of the green technologies or electric technologies that we would have. So the elites in the Western world are happy enough to switch everything to electric, which means they're still the number one in the world, and the reliance comes off the likes of Saudi, Russia, and even the US when it comes to oil. And this is the plan all along. But I've always said this, conversations with the brother talking about this, what they call on the radio here, climate crisis, which is the biggest joke. I mean, it's July, and in Ireland here again, it's raining, and it's been raining for a couple of weeks. Last year it was warm. It's weather. It changes from year to year. There's no big dramatic change. Nothing that I would feel would cause a climate crisis. All they've done is clever marketing in order to kind of get people to believe that it is actually happening. They did it for the last 3 years. They made a fool of many, many people thinking something big was actually happening, when realistically it was something small. But many people in terms of the elites made a huge amount of profit on something that would look to be potentially life-threatening for many people. But when you look through the goals, that's kind of the goals in squashed in, rather than going through every single one. But they're the main ones on what they call their vision, or their goals, their mission goals. Now they use it and spin it out and call it something else. They're calling it their 7-year developmental goals, to end poverty. Let's be honest, they could have ended poverty 50 years ago, but they didn't really want it, because in order for the wealthy to stay wealthy, they need the poor to stay poor. That's essentially how it works. They could have ended poverty a long time ago, but they chose not to. Why all of a sudden are they using this? Because it catches people's attention to make it look like something nice is actually happening, when really, when you look into what they're actually doing, in the next 3 to 5 years, the control for them would be so easy to do, where they could catch someone like me, who might be quite controversial to some of them, and lock me down, because obviously they can digitally track where I'm going. If I have some sort of passport, they can control accounts. If we switch to digital currency, it'll be very, very easy for them to do it. And that's why I wanted to share this with you, just to actually show you there's proof is in the pudding. The guys are actually doing it. Now, when it comes to the scriptural side of what is happening, and this is probably this is the better part, is that, scripture tells us in Ecclesiastes, what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything that's happening at the moment, when we look at what the enemy is doing, as time draws closer to Christ returning, the enemy knows his time is short. He's not using any new ideas. He's using stuff that they would have used even thousands of years ago. Slightly different because of certain technologies that we may have, but the idea was still the same. Everything we're seeing happening at the moment, nothing is new under the sun. God is still fully in control of everything. He can see what's happening. He can see the folly of the enemy and decisions he's making, the people he's using in order to do it. But a day is coming, and this is kind of something that we as believers in Christ know, is that one day is coming when judgment will eventually come and the end of the game has happened. And the enemy himself knows that his time is short. He knows it's coming close to that. So as we see these things starting to pick up, and we see the pace of it starting to get quicker, and the intensity, almost like a woman who's in labour with a child, know that that time is drawing near. And something I said I would answer as well tonight as well, is that many people have been asking me in terms of end times, is it right to be looking at the signs and prophecy and this, and how I sum up what I do personally. I love prophecy. It's something that from a young age, from when I was in the youth, have always loved prophecy. So I always keep an eye on prophecy and Christ coming back, but also we've been given the blessing through Christ that we can live life abundantly because of him. And I would encourage us all that we can still really have a good life while we're waiting for Christ to come back. Yes, it may look like it's darkness and all the things that are happening, but still, as the light of Christ, we should be able to live life in terms of living it to the full in him. Being excited for his return, but while we're still here, we still have a job to do. The harvest is plenty, and a lot of the times the labourers are few. So we really need to be using this time in order to reach as many people as possible. We don't know how long we have left. We don't know when it is that Christ come back. But all I know is that anyone who's not saved, anyone who doesn't know Jesus Christ, right now, you can actually get to know Jesus Christ right now. This is the goodness and the graciousness of God, is that we still have time for people to see and hear the gospel and be set free. And that's, I said, I'd sum it up on that. Remember, there is nothing new. Of all the madness, and most of us that are probably here watching this know that a lot of things go on. We're watching a lot of stations, giving out a lot of news and etc. But just know that there is nothing new under the sun, that ultimately God knows the end. Jesus knows exactly what's going to happen, and he laughs at the enemy who thinks he's going to stop the end from happening. But what we need to do is to have a spirit of perseverance, to be able to push through, even when times are hard. I get it. I have nights myself where sometimes I'm, waking up and, the sweats, and I'm thinking of everything that's going on, and panic sometimes set in. I have to really try to pray it off. And the enemy does this. He'll use fear and he'll use all different tactics. But just know that in the end, ultimately, Christ has won, and he won it at the cross. And this is the blessing that we got through what Christ done, is the salvation through him. And our blessed hope then is on him coming back one day to rule and reign. It's exciting times that we live in. I'll try to keep it short. I know we're at 22, 23 minutes, so I'll cut it down. I will try to do the live on the Sundays. I think it's a good day to do it. And hopefully some collaboration with a few of the guys will be coming up soon as well. But remember, guys, it's very easy to search this stuff up. Go to Google. Just put in fake UN document 2030. You'll see the document yourself. And then Google through some of the stuff that's on it. And you'll actually see that some of the things that's on the fake document, that they call it, is actually happening. And that's how they do it. They distract with one hand while they're doing all the work with the other one. Many people just won't see it. So we need to have our eyes wide open. I'll leave us on that, guys. I tried to keep it under 25 minutes. I'm sure you have things to do on Egg Sunday and family, etc. There will be times, and other times we'll do big long ones. But for now, remember, God's always in control, and keep the faith.